Welcome, everyone. You're joining the DPC Education Center today to learn more about how to become a successful home patient. I'm Kathy Nickham, the Education Director, and today we're going to hear firsthand experiences of a home dialysis patient and a caregiver of a home patient. But before we begin, we'll do a quick review of the format that we're using today. So all of your lines are muted. You're able to ask questions or make comments through the chat box, which is located top right-hand side of your screen. And you're able to ask questions that will be answered throughout the program. Some of them may be held until the end of the program. You'll also receive the link to the recording and the slides within a week. And you'll also have a link to a feedback form at the end of the program that we appreciate if you will take a few minutes and complete. And now I'm privileged to introduce Vanessa Evans, who will be both a presenter today and a facilitator during the meeting. Vanessa has been on dialysis for over 23 years and is the Senior Manager of Advocacy and Communities for Fresenius Medical Care. A passionate advocate for the last 14 years, Vanessa does not let her diagnosis slow her down. She holds a master's degree from Emerson College and a BA in political science from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She has presented for many organizations and is considered an expert in patient experience and engagement. In addition to being a webinar presenter for us today, Vanessa is also one of our board members and has authored articles for our patient magazine, The Kidney Citizen. Our other speaker today is Lacye Trevino, who has been a family caregiver, and Vanessa will introduce her a little bit more. Vanessa, I'm going to turn the program over to you now so we can learn more about you as well as Lacye.
Okay, well, thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much for having us today. We're going to talk about what does it mean to be a successful home patient. I have with me today a friend, an amazing care partner to her husband, and really another person that is very experienced in patient engagement and understanding, the ups and downs of home dialysis, Lacye Trevino. Lacye, thank you so much for joining me here today. Do you want to give yourself a quick little introduction?
Sure. Thank you both very much for having me. Thank you for that warm welcome, Vanessa. My name is Lacye Trevino, and quickly I'll just give you an understanding. I call it my street cred in dialysis. Met my husband in high school. He began in-center hemodialysis at the age of 19. I was 18 and became his care partner. And we have been in dialysis for about 30 years, obviously, initially not by choice. But now we are both patient and care partner advocates, and I'm very excited to hopefully encourage anyone listening in this journey to learn how to truly live on dialysis. It is actually a life-saving opportunity, and it can be a way for you to just change your life up a little bit, but keep on living.
Perfect, Lacye. Thank you so much. So I wanted to just start before we get into all the slides. I appreciate that you're taking some time to chat with us today, and we do want to make this interactive, and we do want to make sure that we're answering your questions. So as Kathy mentioned, there is a chat function on the Teams. It should be on the upper right-hand side if you're looking at your computer or phone. So feel free to drop in any comment or any question as we're going, because this is for you, right? This is for you, and we're here to support you. All right, so with that, let's get started. Can you go to the next slide, please? So we're here today, our slides are really going to include a lot of pictures, a lot of image pictures, but really what we're here today is share our personal stories. And so when you start thinking about doing home dialysis, probably some of the first people that you're going to be talking to is your healthcare team. And I don't know where you fall in your journey, either your loved one or you who's listening into this call, but I know for myself, when I started my journey, it started in center. And I was doing in-center dialysis for probably about 8 years before I even heard about home. And when my healthcare team first approached me about home dialysis, I was very nervous. There was a lot of thoughts going in my head on a lot of preconceived barriers and challenges on why I couldn't do home. And I really made a lot of excuses. It wasn't something that I wanted to do right away. So, Lacye, I'm wondering with Sam, did he
Hmm.
first start at home or did he want to go home right away? Like what did that look like? And then I think we can start to talk a little bit about that transition that, both Sam and myself had.
Yeah,
How did that
kind of
begin for him?
unpack that whole process together.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
Sam and I, when we started, like I said, he was 19 and he was a college soccer star. He was happy and healthy. We'd only been together about a year, and he became sick. Signs and symptoms of kidney failure. Went to the doctor. Comes back to me and found out his kidneys had in fact failed, and this was in 1993. So, Vanessa, you know the technology has changed
Yeah.
so much since then, and he was only given two options. It was you can slip into a coma or you can start in-center hemodialysis. That was it.
Wow.
Well, coma
That's
didn't sound
scary.
too cool, so okay. Well, what's this dialysis thing, right? When we started, I was very apprehensive. One, and I didn't know anything about dialysis, but I knew I'm not going to the sidelines. I want to learn, and we were so blessed. Talking about the care team that we had back in, you're going to learn, and that's exactly what I needed. And of course, it's a lot to digest initially, especially when people crash in, which, oftentimes they do. When I say crash, if you don't know what that means you go to the hospital one day and you find out your kidneys failed and poof, dialysis. What is this? However, they empowered and encouraged and educated us both. So over 7 years in center, because of that engagement with our care team, I became confident in dialysis and we became what they call self care. And, it took time. One day you learn you're taking your temperature, the next day you learn how to monitor your blood pressure. Sam started self cannulating at, the 3 months in. And so over time, we were really running our own treatments in center, but really living life. And it was because we asked so many questions and we were so engaged with our care team. And when we were approached about home therapies for the first time, I actually said yes before Sam.
Yeah.
Over 7 years, nobody had ever mentioned it. And I'm thinking, wait, hold up. You mean we don't have to, you know, deal with transportation, weather, all these other things? We can just wake up and dialyze?
Yeah.
Yes. And so when we first went home, we went home with a floor model machine. So we were basically
Wow.
unpaid technicians.
Yeah.
However, we gained that taste, a little bit of taste of control over this disease and our lives, and a little taste of freedom. And so, that is really one of my strongest messages is for our listener patients to engage in their therapies and their treatments because you can do so much more than you think.
Yeah. So I find it interesting, like Sam's kind of, you know, transition to home because very similarly, I was in center for 8 years and I was approached to go home, but I was very nervous and nobody was saying yes for me. And my transition home happened that I had a PCT, so a patient care technician that
Mhm.
worked on the floor that basically was like, Vanessa, you keep saying that you want to go home, but it's been almost a year and you're still sitting here in center. And so he said, I'm going to start teaching you how to cannulate because that was my greatest fear. And
Of
cannulate
course.
means,
And that is
putting
a big
needles
fear.
into an access, right? And that's scary,
Sure.
very scary, so scary.
Sure.
And so we did it by, first he had me watch the process. So he did it. And by the way, I was totally grossed out. Like, I don't even really like looking at my access now. It's
Which
right.
many of our patients do the same thing.
Right. Like, it was totally kind of like not something I wanted to do. And then we did what is known as the guided method or the touch method. Do you know what that is, Lacye?
I do, where you aren't necessarily cannulating yourself, but you're learning what I call muscle memory. So you're holding someone else's hand. Is that what you're talking about while they're
Yeah,
cannulating?
exactly.
Yeah, you start
So
learning just kind of how the motion feels.
right. So he was actually the one that was like putting the needle in, but I would put my hand over his.
Right.
And so he was putting the needle in, and we did that for a number of weeks until the day came where he was like, okay, today's your turn. You're gonna do it. And I still was like, oh no, I'm not ready. Gabe, it's too cold, it's too hot, like I'm too tired. So many excuses.
You could come up with any excuse you would find.
Any excuse I could find. And he did not let me get out of it though. He was like, no, Vanessa, you need to do it. And so once I put the needle in, I really was like, oh my God, why was I so nervous? Right. But I think it's like
Right.
anything, you don't know until
you know.
you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's the fear
is
of
that
the
how
unknown.
Sam felt?
Well, Sam's story was a little different when it came to initially cannulating. He was in center for about 3 months, and everybody, like every patient has their favorite nurse or their favorite technician, like ask anyone in center and they can tell you who it is. And so Sam's favorite technician, unfortunately, infiltrated. And if you don't know what that means you went through the access and injured the access, and did that 3 times in one day.
Not a fun
but
thing.
Didn't right. And Sam knew something was wrong, but he thought, well, you're putting needles in my arm, so it's supposed to hurt, right? And when they turned the machine on, his arm swelled up like a football, and he had to immediately terminate the treatment, go home, put ice on, and come back on his off day to treat. And he felt angry at his favorite person, his favorite technician. But then, if you know anything about Sam, he's very adamant about taking care of himself now. But at that time, he said, you know what? If I'm going to be mad at anyone, it's going to be me. If anyone's going to hurt, it's me. He felt guilty for being mad, at this person, because they obviously didn't want to hurt him. And so when he returned, he said, all right, teach me right now. And from that moment on, he would not let anybody cannulate him. Nobody would touch his access, and he had the same access for 17 years, which is unusual for people who've been on dialysis for a long time. And it's because you have so many people cannulating you. Every access is different, and they move and they grow. And so, he could feel it. So he knew when something wasn't right.
It makes a difference because you're the patient and you know right away when something isn't right. So Lacye, thinking about the healthcare team and thinking about, potential patients that are on the line or family members that are on the line, and what do you think is the first, what's the first question that they might want to talk to their healthcare team that they should ask when they're thinking about home? Like in my mind, I think it's really important, if you're even on the fence about maybe doing home dialysis, there is something to be said about starting to do self-care even while you're in center. And your goals may range from just gathering your supplies to actually cannulating. What would you say is probably, the best place to start?
In my opinion, in my experience, the best place to start obviously is in center. And more than anything, communication. ask questions. And if you don't get the answer, keep asking. Our care team would turn the machine toward us.
Yep.
And I know we are very short staffed. So it's not like they can just come and hang out at, chairside with you. Unfortunately, and even prior to COVID, our care partners have really been removed from the equation in center. And the only reason I was able to say yes, or because, the reason I did say yes before Sam was because in that 7 years, I was suicide opportunity I had. And so I went from being scared and uncertain of dialysis to becoming so confident that we were self-care together. And so I believe we need our care partners back in the equation and really learn as much as you possibly can while you're there, to the point where when you decide, this home therapy thing,
Yep.
wait a minute, I'm already doing XYZ. All I have to do is, I like to say I want to turn barriers into obstacles, and we can overcome obstacles, and so it's going to happen in your own time. It's going to happen in your own comfort, but communication is key, not only with your care partner, but with your care team. And if you don't know what they're doing, ask them. So this alarm is going off. I'll give you an example. And your PCP walks up. This is all I'm asking you to do is, hey, this alarm is going off because this is what I'm doing. Okay. Oh, good. One more bit of information. So you start learning more and more about how to manage your treatment, why you feel the way you feel, when something doesn't feel right. But communication and questions is really the beginning of an amazing journey to be able to dialyze at home.
Yeah, I think you hit upon just two notes that I want to talk about. One is, you're not on any time frame. This is your own time frame. So
Right.
whether it takes you 1 week or 1 month to 2 to 3 months, that's okay. You should be doing your own learning speed and working within your own goals. And that's where your healthcare team really can make a difference, right? And so once you start to kind of do a lot of that work that you can do in center, putting in the needles, gathering your supplies, understanding the ins and outs of the machines, it doesn't feel so giant to then make a leap to do it at home because you're already doing it in the center. So let's say that you did start with this kind of in-center to home approach, doing the self-care, and now you've learned a little bit about it, and now you're starting to think about training. Can we go to the next slide, please? Great. So, when you think about training, it's going to be very different for everybody because I think, just like we all go to different schools and we're in different classes, training is going to be different for everybody. So let's first start with Lacye, your journey with Sam. How long did it take Sam to train to feel comfortable at home?
Well, because we had become self-care, one day we were in center, a social worker came by and said, you want to go home? I said, heck yes. Again, this was before we have the tiny, adorable, portable machines that we have. So we took a floor model machine home. And, we tell people it looked like a margarita machine, but it didn't make margaritas.
Yeah,
But
you wish it did.
No, right? Especially when you're dialyzing. Anyway, but we were basically unpaid technicians. So when we first went home, the training took much longer because we had so much more to learn. That machine wasn't patient friendly. And so it took us, I want to say about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks before we were fully comfortable. And we would stay on that machine that was built to the house. It had to have, its own plumbing system, dedicated breaker. You had to actually modify your house back then to dialyze that.
Yeah, and by the way, you don't have to modify your house now, right? whether you
Right.
choose a
Right.
PD or HHD
Uh-huh.
modality, there is no
Right.
modification that you need to do at your house. And somebody will come out to your house, somebody from your clinic will come out to the house and help you figure out kind of where you're going to put the machine and what it's going to look like. And by the way,
Sure.
we'll talk about that a little later in our conversation too.
Well, and that's actually where I was headed. So it was a great segue. Um, we would dialyze for 5 years on the big machine, still only 3 days a week, tethered to the house, but we were not tethered to the strict care schedule. And so that's where we got our taste of like freedom and control with home therapies. And then fast forward 5 years, we went in because once you're dialyzing at home, depending whether it's home hemo or peritoneal, you only go to the clinic once or twice a month. So we were going in for a monthly visit, and this next stage representative was there. We'd never heard of next stage, and
Yep.
and I know patients. You get the eye roll, when you have to see the care team. You just
Yeah.
hear blah 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 blah. How are the labs? What did I do wrong? And so we kind of had that mentality at the moment. But then my ears perked up because I heard portable. And I said, no, he's not on peritoneal. He's hemo. And they said, no, it's a next stage machine. It's new. It's a portable home hemodialysis machine. And once again, before Sam could even say anything, I said, yes, please. Because, man, we live in Texas. And if you want to go on a road trip, that's a long drive. And transient treatments are a pain.
Yeah.
So
And
when
by
we
the way,
trained on the
transient
next stage
treatments,
machine,
I
we
mean, Lacey,
only had to train
transient
for about
treatments
two
now,
and a half weeks.
sorry, Lacey, I don't know if you can hear me, but transient treatments now can be even, can be a little
More
more
difficult.
difficult. Yeah, just because there's unfortunately lack of staff.
And COVID restrictions. I
And
mean, like
COVID,
so
yep,
much more has changed. Yeah.
yep, yep.
So our training really, because we already really understood and were comfortable with dialysis in general, learning the next stage machine, I honestly, I laughed and said, what is that, a toy? Because it looks like a Fisher Price toy. I mean, it's made for patients. And so they basically try and make everything go wrong while you're in training so that when you're home, you know how to troubleshoot. But
Right.
what really made me feel comfortable was the 24/7 support. So if something went wrong, because people say, well, what if something goes wrong? You can call and an actual person answers the phone. You're not
Yes.
on hold. It's not, we'll call you back. You're not alone. You have a nurse monitoring you. So that made me feel like, okay. I mean, I was already used to home, but for people who are nervous about it, they think I can't do this without my care team. Well, your care team is still there. They're just not
Right.
hanging out in your living room with you.
Which really, I mean, you're not going to be sent home until you're ready to be home, right? And I think that's the
Exactly.
takeaway here. Like, no one's going to send
Uh-huh.
anybody home until you're ready to be home. And when you think about, what does that training look like? What makes it successful? I think it's being a proactive listener, asking lots of
Hmm.
questions, going through alarms, like wanting to do kind of
Yes.
all the things that may or may not happen actually when you're home. And if you
Right.
do that with your care team and you do that during training, then once you're home, you actually feel so much better because you've done a lot
Yes.
of that training with your team. Can you
Yeah, and
move
that's what I
us
meant
to
by like they try to
our
make
next
everything go
slide?
wrong while you're there.
Yep. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about supplies because if you guys can see, so this is actually a slide picture of me, and this is my monthly supplies. So on a monthly basis, I probably get anywhere from 10 to 12 boxes. I think what's interesting to note is, with Next Stage, you do always have your supplies should you need to use hanging bags. So you have two ways to treat doing home hemodialysis. One, you'd make your dialysate and it can last you, up to 3 treatments, depending on what your prescription is. And then the other one is you always have what we call hanging bags. And so should you, for whatever reason, not have a batch ready to use, or you didn't make it yet, or if you're traveling, or God forbid there's an emergency and you need to leave your house with your machine, you always can take some of these hanging bags with you and dialyze on the road. I know you have like quite a story about that, Lacye. I don't want to talk about it quite yet. Let's talk a little bit about supplies. How did you guys store your supplies? What did it look like for Sam?
So when we started on Next Stage, we did not have the pure flow system yet. So we relied solely on hanging bags, which actually meant we had more supplies than Vanessa showed you. And we would have them delivered twice a month instead of once a month, because we lived in an apartment that was like 645 square feet. So
Yep.
we put boxes under the bed, in the closet, under clothes. We went college style sometimes and like made a table and put a little tablecloth on there. And when the table was gone, we needed to order supplies, and I mean, we just got creative with it. And it really wasn't burdensome for us. Many people say I just don't have the room. But I feel like, with the team, as Vanessa mentioned, we'll go to your home and help you find the best place to set up. It's our job to help figure out how to make it work for you if you want to go home. So you might not think of traditional storage spaces, but we get excited about it. We're like, oh, you could put boxes here, you could put these supplies there, the little shoe containers. I've seen those that hang on the back of closets, for like your actual kit, your daily supplies. I mean, there's all kinds of creative ways to get around that obstacle.
Yeah, and I love that you just said, you're in a small space, and even with the supplies, and again, like you said, at this time you were just always batching. You didn't, you were always using hanging bags. There weren't batches, so you had more supplies even, but you make
Sure.
it work. And so I think, if you're thinking about home dialysis and you're worried about where am I going to do the supplies, how's that going to look, you have options. You can get your
Correct.
supplies delivered every 2 weeks. You can get your supplies delivered monthly, and you actually could get your supplies delivered every other month if you have space and you don't want people coming in and out. So there's
Right.
really a lot of options on what it looks like, and you don't need to feel like, it's a one way or the highway kind of a thing. Like, there are
Sure.
options within the supply space. Sounds like you guys
Right.
had some really creative solutions.
Hey, we get creative. Once we had that taste of freedom and we could travel, man, we did. And so we were going to find a way to make it happen, because it really does. As I'm trying to like not use the word patient as much, but
Yep.
people on dialysis, because
Mhm.
we're still people and we still have goals and dreams, and we wanted to travel and we could. So it was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be defeated by this. I'm going to find a way to make it work. And so that's where the creativity really comes in. And then
Yep.
I know from experience that the team at Next Stage is excited to help you be creative in the ways to make it work. It's our job to make it work if you want to go home, and that's exciting for me.
Yeah, and there's a lot of support, whether you pick a PD or an HHD option.
Right.
You're not in it alone. Supplies is one part of it, but everybody is wanting to make it work for you. So you don't need to feel that you're going to be overwhelmed with supplies. You need to find. I'm not going to pretend it's not
Yes.
overwhelming, because I'm not going to lie about it either. I mean, you get boxes,
No,
and you have to
I
figure
believe
out where
it
you're
is,
going to
but
put
it
it.
becomes right. And then once you figure it out, you're like, oh, okay. But
Yeah.
initially it can be overwhelming, but that's why you have your team there, to kind of help you through each step or feeling that you're
And
experiencing.
truthfully, Lacye, like the first the first delivery that you get is always going to be the most, right? It's always
Right.
going to be because you need one of everything at that point. And then month
Sure.
in, month out, it should change. And, we're not going to pretend it's all unicorns and rainbows. We're going to be very transparent here. But I think the
Oh yeah.
feeling and the sense of empowerment that you're managing your own treatment on your own time really makes you feel that you've got some freedom and some flexibility that you may have felt that you didn't have when you had to go in center.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And something that we loved was that, um, that person patient comparison. Nobody knew Sam was a patient unless we told them, because we
Yeah.
could manage our dialysis life outside, like we had a life, like we had a social life. We worked full time. We went to school. We earned our degrees. We got married. Like all the things that what quote unquote normal people do, we did. We just
Right.
happened to dialyze at different times, And
Yep.
so I loved that people didn't know he was a patient unless we told them. You know, it was great.
Yeah, it doesn't define who you are, It's just
Exactly.
it comes along with who you are. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. So it is very important, and I love this picture because it's a picture of a sleeping baby. And I think that, you know, when you have a newborn in your house, you will hear that, the new parents are, or the parents in general, are putting the baby in a routine. A time that they go to a nap, time that they eat, time that they sleep, bath time, whatever it is. And I feel like when you are a dialysis patient, particularly in the beginning of your journey, and you're kind of, making your transition home, routine is really, really important. And the reason is because when you have a routine, you kind of learn what to expect. Okay, well, I'm going to be dialyzing, mornings 9 to 12 or whatever it is, or evenings. And it kind of helps you mentally think a little bit about how you're going to set up your day. And what does it look like, even scheduling? I know with my husband and I, when I first started, my boys, who by the way now one is applying to college, which is crazy, he was a newborn. And we would think about, my husband worked in sales, still does. I was, kind of teaching at that time. And so we were trying to negotiate our schedules with a newborn baby and try to bring dialysis into our home. And if we didn't have a
Hmm.
routine, I really think we would have failed, because it would have been like every day something different. And we were able to
Sure.
say, we're going to dialyze at night because that's when my husband got home from work. That's when I was also home from work. And that's when we would put the baby down to sleep. And that's kind of worked out for us. That doesn't mean that you can't be flexible, but it did
Sure.
help to have a schedule and write it out. How about you guys, Lacye?
For us, based on like everything you just said, I think the comfort in creating somewhat of a normal schedule is predictability. You know
Mm,
when you're going to feel a certain way. Okay, and we often did it. Usually for us, it was at night during the week, and then
yep.
on the weekends we would wake up extra early and do it so that we lived in an apartment, so we'd want to go to the pool all day. And
Yeah.
so we'd wake up, knock out our treatment, and then I'd be making skewers to put on the grill, and Sam's blowing up floats, and we treated. So the one thing that I would say about like a more regimented schedule, like I said, is predictability. And so
Yep.
you're not surprised, especially once you get into that routine, just like you mentioned with a baby. Like then it also helps you notice when something's off. Like,
Yeah.
why that doesn't feel normal. That, something seems different, or,
Yeah,
um, so I
that's
believe that
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 is a
also,
good point.
yeah, and I believe that continues to build your confidence in knowing your body, knowing the machine, everything about dialysis and your treatment. So that predictability is calming, and it builds confidence. But I do love the fact that you can change it up. Holidays come up, you want to travel, you know what, I was gonna dialyze tonight, but I don't feel like it. I'm gonna wake up and do it early in the morning. You're still
Yeah,
following your
I mean, let me
prescription,
tell you,
you
I
know?
still do that today, like I'm
Yeah,
like, nah,
yeah.
I'm not going to do it tonight. Let me
Just
ask
don't
you,
feel. I'm
how
not
long
feeling
do
it.
you think it takes in general? Clearly, everybody is different. And so I know you're basing
Sure.
it more on, just Sam's personal journey. How long would you say it took you and Sam to get into a routine that you feel comfortable? Was it a week? Was it a month? Was it a year? Like until you felt like I got this.
Well, I, it's hard to answer because we dialyzed at home prior to next stage. So when we
Yep.
were only doing 3 days a week, um, I, we were pretty regimented. I mean, he was teaching full time. I was still in school full time, and so he was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and had to do it before school. So I mean, that was very regimented. When we transitioned to next stage, honestly, we fell into a routine within a week or two, maybe. I mean, we realized quickly that we were both working full time. So Sam was a high school teacher and soccer coach. And so there were
Yep.
times where he wasn't getting home until like 11 o'clock at night after a game. So I would have the machine built and ready to go. Dinner was ready, he'd come home, and then, that's when we had time to dialyze. So it was, I mean, you could fall into a routine, I would say within a week or two, just based on what your life schedule, currently is, where it fits into your life, instead of trying to fit your life into dialysis. It becomes the opposite.
Yeah, I agree. And everybody's journey is different. When I talk to new
Sure.
patients and they say, well, how long did it take you? I would say it took me 6 to 8 months to really feel comfortable. So it's
Okay.
totally normal in that first three
Yep.
months to feel like this is overwhelming. I want to quit. It's too much. But I always tell
Right.
patients, like, give yourself, that 6 to 8 month, even year, because it takes a while to get used to it. And you will, but you got to find
Yeah.
your comfort level, and everybody is really different.
And I still believe in constant communication. So,
100%.
you
Yeah.
still have your care team. And if you're feeling overwhelmed or scared or I can't do this, you have a social worker to speak with. You have, your whole care team. Like, okay, what is it exactly that's making you feel overwhelmed? Let's talk through it. Let's unpack this together, and don't feel like, well, now that I'm home, I don't have anyone to talk to, because you do.
Yeah.
And
And
by all
being
means, reach out
successful
to other
means,
patients.
yeah, being successful means that you help, you rely on the other people that are there, the social worker,
Right.
the dietitian. By the way, there's
Mhm.
respite care. So if you needed to go
Yes.
in and just take a break, either you or your care partner needs a
Uh-huh.
break, there you go in and do respite. So there
Yeah,
are
do a week of respite. Uh-huh.
right. There are a lot of opportunities there to, take time. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is all about organization, right? And I think, Lacey, you talked a lot about this. Like, not only are we dialysis patients, but you know what? We're actually people with lives, right? We
Yes.
have families, we might have jobs, there are hobbies that we're doing, we're helping one another. And so organization is really going to be key. I think that kind of falls in line a little bit with routine, and kind of keeping things organized. So, do you have any tips or tricks on how you guys kept things organized?
I'm not going to lie. You mentioned we're still people.
Yeah.
I wasn't totally the most organized person.
That's all
um,
right. You're
I
allowed to say it.
Yeah, I'm being honest here. We're kind of life by the drop kind of people. Like, oh, point me in the right direction and go.
Yep.
However, I did learn that, like, I I was always the one that would, like, build Sam's table.
Yep.
Like,
Hmm.
you put the chuck down. I knew how much tape, how long he wanted it, the tabs. I mean, so it became a routine, and I could probably do it in my sleep. One thing that really helped me was creating my own checklist for building the machine,
That's a great
because in
idea.
my experience, you become so accustomed that you can become complacent. And I would be cooking dinner while I was, setting the machine up to prime or whatever. And so it's easy to miss a clamp, or, and so I took all of my training, and once I became, comfortable with everything, I put it in my own words. And so it was like one piece of paper that I had laminated. And so I could, if I got distracted while I was setting the machine up, or, whatever I was doing, I could look back and be like, where did I leave off? Oh, yeah, that's right. So the organization that helped me the most was taking the training, and once I built that routine, and putting it into my own words, so that I knew exactly where I might have forgotten something. Because,
Hmm.
I hate using the word easy, but once you really get into the routine, it's so patient friendly that I was afraid I was going to miss a beat or miss a step, because I was so used to doing it. It was just part of life, and I wanted to make sure I didn't make that mistake. Which, you're going to make mistakes, and that's why you have a care team, and it's okay. It's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And it's important to take time for you too, right? Like, don't make it always all about dialysis. Like, make sure you
Right.
go to lunch with friends, take your dog for a walk, you know, you have a drink
Sure.
with whatever, your neighbors, whatever it is, you want to be a part of life. And that's what home allows you to do. But you are kind of juggling, a different kind of job that you are able to do in your home. And so, kind of being organized is going to be important. I like the idea
Sure.
of a checklist. I
Yep.
like the idea, and people do all sorts of different things where they get their supplies out the night before, or
Right.
they make little packs to get things organized. And it's really going to be what is best for you. So find kind of what is that,
It's yeah.
best practice.
It, it's honestly kind of like, there was that big food prepping craze where, like, Sunday, I'm going to cook these 5 things, and I'm going to make my lunches and dinners for the whole week. So I'm eating healthy. Okay. Well, Sunday, I'm going to prepare my kits for the week that I'm going to need. So I just have to
Right.
grab one. Your cartridge is right there with it. So whatever works for you. And I also know a lot of people like journaling, like, you have next to me, so that's monitoring you. However, they like to write down um, what medications they're on. Some people just want paper still, so journaling helps with organization too.
Yeah, it's totally true. And it's just finding like what is that space for you, right?
Right.
So let's go to our one of our last slides, which is talking a little bit about the comforts of home. We're getting to this Thanksgiving, Christmas
Mhm.
time, and I live in the Northeast. I've got my heater blasting on my legs right now as we're chatting, although the sun is out, so that is nice. There is something definitely comfortable about being in your home. And
Yes.
what can you do to make your space your own? What makes it comfortable? What makes it homey? And so, before you answer that for you guys, I can tell you that for me, I don't want to say that I love going on dialysis because nobody necessarily loves it. But I have to
Sure.
say, I don't really mind it because for me, it's become me time. I watch Netflix. I've got now in the winter, I have one of those like warming blankets. And of course, always check with your healthcare team to see, what you can and can't do. But
Sure.
it just allows me to be kind of cozy in my space. I usually have dinner while I do it. I sip my tea. I love to watch Netflix series.
Uh huh.
I swear to God, in the colder months, it's easier to get on dialysis because I'm, comfy
Because you're
cozy.
all cozied up.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
all cozy in my own little space. So what did you guys do to make it yours?
It's funny when you said me time. Sam and I learned it really became designated hangout time,
Yep.
almost like date night. I mean, we were at home, but his treatments were 5 days a week, 2.5 ish hours for treatment. And so that's like dinner and a movie.
Right.
And so it was designated hangout time. And we really didn't mind it. I mean, one, we were, working full time jobs, living our life. It was almost like our own respite,
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
oh,
From your own
we have to
world.
be
Yep.
here at this time, right? Something else that we did, and some people are comfortable with this, some people aren't, but our friends knew all about dialysis, like our closest friends.
Yeah.
And so, they call and say, hey, what are you guys doing tonight? We got to dialyze, but you can come over. All right, cool. And they come over and hang out with us. And so
Yeah.
it wasn't like a taboo, or like I got to keep this secret, or, it was just like, okay, whatever. Some of them were terrified of needles, and so they would like step outside when Sam was cannulating, and then
Yep.
once he was on the machine, they'd come back in, and we were
Yep.
like, that's fine. So we just incorporated it into our lives so that it was just everybody knew, like, oh, Sam has to dialyze. Well, if we're going to go out tonight, you're going to have to wait 2.5 hours. Okay, cool. They'd come over, we'd have dinner, and then he'd get off the machine. And that's another thing about frequency is the recovery time was so minimal. Sam had so much more energy that when he got off the machine, I mean, literally, he could just hop in the shower or change his clothes, and we could go to dinner or go see live music or whatever it is you love to do because he felt so much better. And so making your space about what you love. If you want private time, make it your private time. If you want to have
Right.
your friends over, educate them and have your friends over. It really is all about what works for you.
Yeah, it's 100%. And I agree. Like in the summer, I find that we always have people here. And I do my treatment. People are coming in and out, and it's just like
Yeah,
part of the everyday world that we live in. And when I first came home, and this is interesting when you think about what makes success at home, I didn't know what to expect. So I thought I wanted to be in a room, I guess, kind of by myself, right? Doing my
right.
treatment. And what I learned is, no, actually, I don't want to be in a room by myself. And we moved
Yes,
it so that I do my treatment in the family room where people are coming in and out. But,
yep,
you have options. Again, back to the options, right?
exactly. Whatever makes you the most comfortable.
Yeah. And you can always change it. You can, wheel it around, move
Hmm.
it in or out, whatever, wherever it is that you
Yep.
want to be, you are able to do that. So let's get to our last slide here. And it's really just a picture of lemons. And I have this saying here, right? When life gives you lemons, we say you make
You
lemonade.
make lemonade.
It, you
Uh-huh.
make lemonade, and man, you guys have made some really good lemonade. As we think about kind of wrapping up here, Lacye, what's the one takeaway that you'd want to give to the audience with people that are, maybe thinking about home, still not too sure about it? What do you want to tell them today?
Honestly, the biggest thing is I want you I want you to be you again. I want
Yeah.
you to have, the human back into your life, not the patient. Oftentimes, as a patient advocate, we visit clinics and, I hear the line, what are you trying to sell me? I'm not trying to sell you anything. As a matter of fact, I'm not a salesperson. What I'm trying to do is give you your life back. I want you to identify as Bob or Sarah, not dialysis patient. And to me,
Yep.
that's what home therapy really does, is it allows you to be you again. And whatever it is you miss doing, way back when Sam started, it was you can't, you won't, you'll never, you can't go to work, can't work full time, fill in the blank, whatever it was. But see, now we have the opportunity to say, yes, you can go back to work full time. Yes, you can go visit your grandkids for a week. Yes, you can. I want to give you back. that's really the beauty of it all, in my opinion.
I agree. I think it's like, get your life back. Take the time that you need to get there. I think the other thing that I'd want people to know is you are not alone. There are thousands of patients that do home dialysis, and there's a huge community out there.
Yes,
There is a lot of resources for you. There are websites that you can look at, but there's also patient communities that you can look at. And if
hmm
you research patient communities, whether it's a Facebook community, or one of the
right,
providers, maybe they have communities. There's, a kidney care connection
sure.
community. It's an app. There's a lot of places that you can go to help find
I
your
would be
answer.
cautious. Yeah, be cautious
Yes,
though, because there are some of those that are incredibly negative, and some of the information is not accurate, and it's very negative. You so please be cautious. Um, I don't want to call
I'm
them out
glad that you said
specifically,
that,
but
because remember, this is everybody else's opinion, and you might find,
right,
where there's one person that says yes, there's 30 that say no. And by the way,
correct.
it's your own personal journey. But I do think that you can go in and find out what are people talking about and
Sure.
seeing. You can look at videos. There's a lot of videos that show the different
hmm
machines that are out there. Like, be an educated consumer, um,
Yes.
and think about it, because it really could be something that allows you to feel more like yourself, but you won't know unless you try. And I
Right.
think that's what both Lacey and I want to leave you with, is just understanding that there are options, and you should know that
hmm
you have choices, whether you want to go in center or go home, but you should know
Right.
the whys about both of them.
And I do believe that it depends. Often a little saying or prayer or whatever you call it when I'm speaking is, please give me the right words for the right people at the right time. So if
Yep.
you don't feel like it's the right time, that's okay. If you're like chomping at the bit, great. We have plenty of people who are ready to get you home, but it doesn't have to be right now. Just ask questions, keep communicating, and when it's your time, you'll know. And when you're comfortable with your decision, it's your life and it's your decision. So by
A
all means,
hundred percent.
just yeah, feel okay with either, whatever you choose, whatever works for you is okay.
Yep, but at least know about it, right? At least
Yes,
know about it.
yes,
And, I can tell you, for me, it took me a year and a half to transition home. And
yeah,
there again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, there were just a lot of like barriers and challenges that I thought I wasn't going to be able to overcome, but I actually could. And
right.
so, advocate for yourself, find someone that will advocate with you and for you. And,
hmm
go with those things. Think about the routine, think about organization, think about what it could be like to have those comforts of home, knowing that you have a healthcare team that is ready to support you wherever you fall in your journey. With that, I really thank you, Lacey. I didn't see any questions in the chat, but I think that you and I, were able to really kind of tell our story and our journeys from a care partner's perspective to a current patient now. We're always available to chat and talk
Always.
with you. Thank you so much for taking the time today to think about home dialysis. Hannah just put in the chat, a survey. So if you can take a minute to fill out that survey, let us know. Did you like it? Did you not? What do you want to hear in the future? We are here for
Yeah,
you,
what
and
do
we
you
want to
need?
make sure that we're answering your questions and prepared to do
Right.
more educational workshops like this one.
Perfect. And I just want to say thank you again for having me, especially as a care partner, because we need our care partners. They are oftentimes, if not all, well, most of the time, 50% of the decision to go home. So please, engage your family, engage your spouse, friend, whoever it is. Um, don't go through this alone. Please, have your care partner with you and learning with you, and have more than one, so you
Yeah.
don't feel like people say it's a burden. It's not a burden. You know, I love my husband. Excuse me. I wanted to be there, and I was grateful that our care team said, yes, you can be here, and they educated me. So I'm honored to have been able to participate. And by all means, if there's any questions I can answer, Vanessa, if you see anything come through, let me know.
I
I'm
will.
always here as an advocate.
Vanessa,
Absolutely. Well, yes, Kathy,
Vanessa,
please.
yeah, I wanted to thank Vanessa, you and Lacye for sharing your expertise and your experience with us today. And know that this recording will be available on our website, and you may want to share this with family members and potential caregivers, because I think a lot of times we hear some patients say, oh no, I don't, my spouse wouldn't want to do this, or I don't want to ask somebody in my
Right.
life to do this. So please share this video with them as well. We certainly would appreciate that. And thank you, audience, for joining us today. And join us, please, on December 15th, when we talk about an overview of the 2022 midterm elections, as well as what are the predictions for the 118th Congress for this next year. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone. And if you are one of the 43% of American adults planning to travel for Thanksgiving, please have safe travels. Thank you all for joining us.
Good
Bye-bye.
advice.
Right.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Kathy.
Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving to all. And I look forward to your next webinar. Sounds very interesting. Have a great
Great.
day.
Thank you all. Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.